And welcome back. A groundbreaking clinical trial by South Africa and Uganda has revealed that a twice-a-year injection of the pre-exposure prophylaxis drugs and lenacapavir offers 100% complete protection against HIV infection. The study compared the 6-month injection to the 2 other daily pill regimens, both also PrEP drugs. Professor Linda-Gail Bekker, the principal investigator for the South African segment of the trial and the director of the Desmond Tutu HIV Centre at the University of Cape Town, now joins us live from the 2024 International AIDS Conference, which is currently underway in Munich in Germany. Prof, a very good morning to you. Thank you so much for making time for us. What a result. Congratulations. What does this mean?
Hi, Aldrin. Yeah, it's terrific news. I presented it to the community here at the AIDS conference on Wednesday, and I have to tell you, the whole audience must have been about 3,000 people stood up and clapped for at least a minute. I felt like I was at the Oscars. But actually, it's just pure joy that, you know, to see a result like this is great hope for particularly for young women and girls all around the world who, you know, have carried the burden of HIV.
Yeah. So what is the difference here with that twice-yearly injection compared to what we are currently doing?
Yeah, so what we, you know, obviously there's the ABC of prevention that we've had for many decades now. And then about 14 years ago, we discovered that you could take an antiretroviral agent, in this case, tenofovir with emtricitabine as a single pill, called what we've come to know as oral pre-exposure prophylaxis, every day. And that will protect you very well against HIV. The problem is in young people's lives in particular, but I'll say also in older people's lives, it's sometimes very hard to do something daily when you're not sick, you know, so you have to remember to take this pill. It means every day you consciously have to make the decision, I'm going to, you know, undertake this prevention. And we find that young people really struggle to do this. And so even though we've been prescribing PrEP and around the world, 6 million people are now on oral PrEP, almost 2 million of them in South Africa, we find that it isn't working as well as we would like, particularly in young people, simply because people struggle to do this. The wonderful thing about getting a shot twice a year is you go to the clinic, get your injection, and you can forget about it, you know, until the next shot 6 months later. And so what we found in the trial, we compared the injection to the oral dosing in a randomized fashion, in a blinded way, and the young women and girls who got the injection were completely protected against HIV. So it's about having the drug on board at the time of exposure to HIV, and we just know that it's more reliably there when it's injected twice a year.
Yeah. Prof, before I go to my next question, just want to understand this. Does it mean that as it stands currently, that PrEP gives 100% protection?
It does. So there's now we have the choice of injectable PrEP or oral PrEP. If you choose that you want to swallow a pill rather, you need to know that you're going to be able to do this in a, you know, adherent, consistent manner. If you think you're somebody who struggles to do a daily pill, you are now, or as soon as it's licensed, going to have the option of being able to get an injection. So it's a little bit like contraception. Yep. We know young women can choose either, or older women can choose to have a oral contraceptive, they can have a hormonal injectable contraceptive, or indeed even now we can offer them implants or IUDs. So it's offering choice and allowing people to use the methodology that they believe is going to work best for themselves.
And with that information, is there fear at all within the medical profession that because of this guarantee of 100% protection, it could lead to more risky sexual behavior? And then the industry could find itself now dealing with more STIs and STDs that are not necessarily related to HIV, but also poses a high risk.
So, Aldrin, you're quite right. We have to still advise people that this protects against HIV only. And if there is a risk of STIs, then condoms are our go-to, of course. And And for young women, they still need to be thinking about pregnancy. If they are wishing not to become pregnant, then contraception is important. So all of the other methodologies need to, continue to be provided. People still need to be counseled about good sexual reproductive practices. But this is wonderful, given that we know that young people are having sex. And in our country where virus is still being transmitted and circulating, unfortunately, it's terrific to at least protect people against HIV. I don't think it leads to more sex, but it does mean now that the sex that people are having at least won't result in HIV if they are able to access this wonderful new innovation.
Yeah. And from a cost perspective, is it much cheaper? And what's the possibility of South Africa soon rolling this out to the general public?
So all the million-dollar questions, as it were. This is really important. Access is at the heart of all of this. If we don't get the product, it has no impact at all. So first of all, we're just in the process of sorting out the results. The young women who are in the trial are now being unblinded, and they're being offered the injection if they wish, which is the ethical thing to do. The next phase really is to move the data to the regulators. Now, there is a second trial underway at the moment called Purpose 2. We are also running that in South Africa, but it's also being run all around the world in cisgender men, transgender women, non-binary people, to see if it works as well in these other populations. We hope that trial will read out in the next few months. It is also fully enrolled. And then these data will go to the FDA and, of course, to SAHPRA, to the Uganda regulators as well. We cannot roll this out until we have licensure. So that will be the next step. And then, of course, the all-important question of access and affordability. What the manufacturer is telling us is that they will be offering voluntary licenses to generic companies immediately. And while we're waiting for those generic companies to come on board, they will be offering this new agent as a tiered priced, affordable option to our governments, particularly in low-income countries.
Yeah, and that's a very important one. And we know what happened with COVID-19 and the vaccines around COVID-19, and the president expressing this issue around what he called apartheid. I think he said something along the lines of apartheid vaccines. But what should happen to ensure that the low-income countries don't get left behind, also considering how susceptible they are?
Absolutely. So again, at this moment, what we're getting, reassurances from the manufacturers. But I can tell you that Winnie Banyima, the head of UNAIDS, was on this week. She is holding them to account. We also spoke to Ambassador Nkengasong, the head of PEPFAR, who's saying, he's talking to the manufacturer, and of course, other agencies such as the Gates Foundation and so on. I know that the manufacturers will also be approaching our governments. And then, of course, we all need to hold the manufacturers to account and ensure that their promises, and they've gone publicly, there are actually press statements to this nature, that we hold them account to make sure that they do, in fact, do what they say they are going to do.
Finally, Prof, during the conference as well, we heard of a German man likely to have been cured from HIV from a stem cell transplant. Are you able to speak a bit on that?
Yes, very exciting. So he's known as the second Berlin patient. Some of you may remember we did have a first Berlin patient, Timothy Ray Brown, who was in fact the first man ever to be cured of HIV through a stem cell transplant. The second person similarly developed a cancer living with HIV. He needed to undergo transplantation. As a result of the transplantation, he has been found now together with antiretrovirals, to be completely free of HIV. So these are now, a handful of people. It was magnificent. We had them all here at the conference, some of them with their stem cell donors. So these are people whose lives, have been completely changed because a radical treatment, it must be said, to have a stem cell transplant, they needed it for reasons of their cancer rather than HIV, but a magnificent result to see that we can actually kick HIV out of the body by doing these, interventions. And, it gives us great hope for cure as well. So there's been a good sense of upbeatness at the conference this year, particularly around prevention and cure.
Yeah, it sounds as though that there is progress that is being made at the conference, and also having all of the professionals and experts in the field being able to debate some of the outcomes from the clinical trials that have been run as well. But then you have organizations like, for instance, the Treatment Action Campaign that has boycotted the conference. As somebody who's active in this space, what do you make of that?
I obviously we're all devastated by the situation our world is in today, and what is happening in the Middle East is hugely on our minds. However, we are also waging war against HIV, and this convening is a very important one for us to really take stock, see where we are. I think we're at a crossroads for HIV where we now really need to kind of, if you like, if I use the analogy of a car, we're here in Mercedes-Benz country here, we've got to move into a cruise mode here because we are still very much needing to keep our attention on the HIV epidemic. Yet there are many distractions around the world, important distractions, such as wars and climate change. Somehow we need to be sure that we don't stop responding to HIV, because like any epidemic, when you take your foot off the gas, it can go way out of control again. And of course, in our part of the world, we still sit in the midst of a very serious epidemic. Yeah. 3,000 young women in our region become infected with HIV every single week. This is extraordinary. And these young folk live with the virus for the rest of their lives. Very few people, undergo the cure that we heard about this week. None indeed in our countries. So it's very important that we continue to find ways to keep attention on HIV, make sure we get the resources, and we continue to find new innovation, because we only win when we see a world that has no HIV anymore.